On and on. We're about 1 minute away from broadcast. Not
Good
that
stuff.
there's nobody in the chat right now, I don't think so.
5 people watching.
5 people watching. Feel free, those people that are just lurking, one of them is us, one of them is Marc Andre.
So
Yeah,
there's
one of the-
three humans.
3 people lurking.
3 whole humans.
So if anybody who's lurking, feel free to log right into, log in, and then you can join the conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll just take those sides. And Marc Andre, you can take either side you want, I think. Whether you want to argue along with me with George telling him why Haley's so broken and needs to be nerfed.
I don't have the devastation picture.
Devastation picture.
I need to get on. Oh, your Wi-Fi is horrible.
All right.
Yeah, we're down in the basement.
No, I'm not connected to it.
Oh,
We are just about ready to broadcast.
do you know the password?
So start playing the song, and as soon as the song ends,
Flip to the other one.
hi guys, and welcome to This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes. I am Mift Gorax, and joining me today is my partner in crime, Semi-Auto Magic. This is our first broadcast of This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes. Why did we feel, with all the other stuff we're doing with Moose Machine right now, I should say you are doing with Moose Machine right now because I'm kind of on hiatus for the summer, why did we decide we needed a podcast on top of all of this, Semi?
Well, I think realistically, what we've been getting at most of the time is basically just either battle reports or just live streaming tournaments. And when you're doing that, you don't really have time to sit down and talk about the news, talk about things that are happening, and to give a little bit more long form information about this game that we love to play.
Absolutely, and I think that what we're trying to do with the broadcast is fill a need. There's no regular weekly news broadcast out there that focuses on War Machine and Hordes and other products from Privateer Press, and I think that a weekly 1-hour report, we're going to keep it tight, we're going to keep it sweet, we're going to try to stay on topic. I think a weekly 1-hour report is going to serve something. There are 3 different ways to interact with Moose Machine and This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes. You can, one, log into Twitch. Twitch, we stream live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's right, we are going to try to stream live every week, at least for the next 6 or 7 weeks.
Yep.
What's the second way?
The second way would be going to our Facebook page. You can go there. We always post whenever we're going to go live. We'll also be posting any spoilers, any other weirdness that we see going over the interwebs. And you can interact with us there and leave comments and stuff that you want to yell at us about.
The last way, of course, is you can find any of our videos on YouTube. They're usually up a couple weeks after we've done them. And finally, weekly, we will be posting these to iTunes, so you can download them to your iPod and listen to us jinky jargonators on the way to work. Joining us today in the studio, and you can't see him, and it's too bad because he's a beautiful, beautiful man. He's got many, many fans from around the country, is Marc Andre LeBlanc. Say hello there, Marc.
Hey there, guys.
So, Marc, to tout who Marc is, who is Marc there, Semi?
Well, I met him as just part of our meta, a really great player that I don't think it's unfair to say dominated the local scene. Playing
so
a lot
bad you had to kick him out.
Yeah, so we had to kick him out. He went off to Toronto and made a name for himself there. He's also a member of the Canadian WTC team, I believe, for the 2nd year running. So we'll be able to talk to him about that today.
So we're gonna do a long interview with you, Marc, later on in the show. But I think the first things first. Let's talk a bit about some of the hot topics this week, and all three. Feel free to join in there, Marc Andre. Let's talk about some of the hot topics that's come up on the PP website this week that's coming up from Privateer Press. I think the first one is they revealed the cover to Devastation. It wasn't quite this week. I think it was actually a couple weeks ago. But it sort of is revealing some of what we're going to see in the next release. And so let's start with Semi. What do you see on this cover? What is it telling us?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have the cover in front of us right now.
Well, I will pull it up on my iPad quickly. Well, first off, I think they revealed some of the colossals for hordes, right? Marc Andre, what so far has the Devastation cover revealed to you?
Well, we've got confirmation that Doomshaper 3 maybe fights Chromac at some point in the fluff, although that didn't happen with Zerkova and Denegra. So, yeah, there is. I mean, we get to see the sweet art for the what is it, the Winter King or the Glacier King?
Glacial King, yes.
The Glacial King, yeah.
And the Zapdos.
Yeah.
I forgot the Thunder Chicken.
Yeah.
Giant Thunder Chicken.
Yeah.
So I mean, why are these two new colossals so important for hordes? Why is everybody so excited about these new? Well, it's not just two; it's one for every faction.
Well, I don't think everybody's really excited about them. I think everybody is optimistically hopeful. After the first round of Gargantuans being underwhelming to a beast, I think a lot of people look at the later colossal releases from Privateer Press, and they have a hope, and the later colossals, the later battle engines, and they have a hope that with the new release of Gargantuans, we'll actually see some more kind of support Gargantuans, ones that might actually have more of an effect on the game.
Right.
There are so few times that in competitive play, or realistically even at your local game store, that you'll see a Gargantuan on the field, that I think it would be really nice to have them affect the meta in the same way they did, that Colossals did.
Right.
Colossals aren't in every list, but they do find their place in some lists.
Absolutely.
Where Gargantuans, I can't think of the last list that I saw that was doing any kind of good with them.
At a tournament level, I mean, I think you see a lot of them with people just putting them down on the table.
Well, I don't see Gargantuans with people. Outside of people put down the Mountain King because, well, it's such an awesome model.
Yeah.
And people put down the Archangel, again, because it's a beautiful model and it's the dragon. But, I mean, I think those are the only two I've seen.
I would say they're definitely not as ubiquitous as Colossals, but you've definitely seen some big names win big tournaments with them. Gen Con was won by Chuck, who was running double Archangels in the hardcore.
Right. What was he playing as his Warcaster or as Warlock on that one?
I believe it was Pythagoras.
Yeah,
just
that makes
to
sense.
you say you get to bring one back. Personally, I used the Waldrath in Iron Gauntlet a few times. I definitely enjoyed it there. They all have their uses, but I definitely agree with George that they're not nearly as popular.
We forgot to introduce, of course, our moderator, who's down at the bottom of your screen. That's Maelstrom over there. Maelstrom, what was your first purchase? Was what?
An Archangel.
That I think we see more than anything else. You see the guy who has just gotten into it. If he can afford it, especially with hordes, because they look so badass.
Oh yeah,
They do look badass.
So yeah, I think from my point of view, I think you're both basically. I'm agreeing with you. What is Marc Andre, have you had a chance to sort of, other than they've teased out a little bit about what the new Colossals do, right? We've seen a little sort of hints as to.
Yeah.
So you mean the Gargantuans?
Yeah, the Gargantuans. So.
Yeah, definitely. We know a couple of their animi. Well, I guess we can sort of speculate. We know that the I'm blanking on the name, but the Zapdos has Skyfire, which kind of helps lightning damage.
Yeah.
I think in its command range. It's also got super conduction, which helps to hit roll by +2. So definitely sensing a theme there, which is a bit strange because Circle doesn't have that many lightning type weapons.
Yeah, that is weird. Maybe it's so that you can finally combine your Signar army with your Circle.
Well, I suspect it's something along the lines of what we'll see with Convergence, where they have also spoiled a Colossal for Convergence that is supposed to do all kinds of wonderful things for Lightning, and we have exactly one Lightning Jack in Convergence.
Yeah, it's going to be great for all the Signar players to lose that one advantage that they have. The one of 800 advantages. Okay, so moving on from what we saw from the Devastation cover, we have, this is very recent, and I think we can all get a little bit behind this and a little excited. There's been some leaks on Doomshaper 3.
Yeah, we've seen his model, and we've seen the title that he's a Warlock unit.
Marc Andre, are you excited?
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing a lot of that lately. I don't disagree. Trolls really have a sweet buff with the Chronicler when your Warlock's a unit. That's going to be pretty big, right there for it. I mean, you're going to be able to make Doomshaper immune to shooting if you want,
Sweet.
kind of like you do with Grim 2. So it's a good start.
Why both of you guys? I can send this out to both of you. Why do you think they're going in the route of making Warcaster Warlock units? It seems this is like becoming the thing. It seems to be.
I mean, I think part of it is they want to, just innovate. Like they've been, you've been seeing a lot more Cav. You've been seeing the battle engines. I mean, Warlock and Warcasters. It's just fun. I mean, they've just been really creative since Mark II.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think they're really trying to fill out all the design niches.
Okay.
Right, because you've got you start off with these are small or medium based models, and then you ended up with some large based models, and then we got colossal size models, and then we started getting units.
Right.
I think they're really trying to move out into all the design spaces where you could have a warlock. We've seen, Karchev, who is the Jack Warcaster. We've seen, a couple of cavalry warcasters on huge bases. We have yet to see sort of a colossal one, but we have, I guess, with Denegra 3 might be the first sort of colossal looking warcaster.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, I guess that all makes sense. So I think what we can take from this is really it's about moving into the design space and creating more interesting games by creating something different and not doing it to just one faction, trying to spread it out amongst the factions. That every faction should have access to this new style of gameplay, however that may be. All right, guys, moving right along. We have plenty more to talk about today, and we could go on and on and on about all the new releases and all the new little hints, but I think we touched on two of the big ones. Let's talk a bit. We're going to move right along. It is now time to move to Rip from the Forums. We've been debating a lot about how we were going to touch Ripped on the Forums, and we're going to have a debate. We're going to have a debate, and we're all going to take a side of some sort. Today's debate, we're going to talk about Haley 2, and I think spending any time on the PP forums, this seems to come up, I'd say, once every 3 days.
Yeah, about that.
Somebody puts up a poll on why we need to get rid of Haley 2.
Or why we need to fix her, or why she's bad for the game.
Or I can't wait for Mark 3 so that Haley 2 dies. This comes up so often. There's rules in some metas that, friends don't let friends play Haley 2. Or against the friend because you won't have a friend anymore. And once again, we're seeing this week, and I think the reason why it's coming up hot and heavy this week is because of the appearance of Haley 3. People are getting excited, so they're starting to field Haley 2 again. I think you're seeing it for that. Here's the thing, you guys. Does Privateer Press actually need to do anything to Haley 2? Let's open up with Marc-Andre. What are your thoughts on where Haley 2 stands? Does she need to be changed?
Well, I think she is the best caster in the game. I don't think I can really dispute that. Just outside, just face value, I think she's probably the best. However, you don't see Signar winning every tournament. And there's a few reasons for that. Namely, because you can't drop her every round in most tournaments. Secondly, though, because most other factions can still compete with her, and they also have, while they may not have the best casters or warlocks, they certainly have the tools and sometimes the theme lists to get up to her level, or, in my opinion, sometimes surpass her.
Absolutely, that very well pointed out, George. I think you'll argue on the full support side. And I mean, I could take the other side, and I'm going to, just because I think we need somebody to be the voice of unreasonability here. But you have very strong opinions that there's nothing that needs to be changed.
Well, I don't think...
And that we don't even need to have this conversation anymore.
Well, I think the conversation will always come up because people play against Darius. People then play against Striker because their buddy bought a battle box, and maybe they bought Darius because Darius is cool looking, and then their buddy drops Haley 2 on the table, and it's just a shock. How can I ever beat this? You just take away an entire turn. Why is my turn gone? Why can't I do things? Why are you making me do things on my turn instead of me doing things on my turn? that kind of shock leads people to this snap gut reaction that Haley is bad. When I played Haley 2, I tended to play her in a very different manner than most people do. I played her really jack heavy. I would say that it was a very suboptimal setup. So I never actually was the powerhouse that I have seen other people be with her. But I think that if someone has spent any time thinking about how their lists will react to Haley 2 and don't let themselves get flustered by her, she is, I would say, a non-issue on the feet, and then you're just dealing with a strong faction-based caster. Now, with Scenario, she can be troublesome, but I think she's less troublesome than, say, Epic Denagra.
Well, I would agree with you a little bit on that. But here's the other side of it, and I mean, I'm looking at from even when your opponent looks at Haley's card the first time, there's also a shit bucket full of awesome on that card. I mean, you've got completely balanced spell list. You've got a wickedly awesome feat. You've got 8 focus. You add in Thorn into that mix, where she's not only that, she's got an awesome character jack. Then you add the fact that she can bond to a jack. I mean, you're just adding insult into injury.
And don't forget the Squire for that extra 2 inches of control
add the
area.
Squire into the 2 inches of control area and the extra focus, because that's what she needed, was more focus. The fact that she can hold all of her focus and just dump it into casting, or dump it into her jacks and be super effective in either gameplay. The fact that she rocks at control, and with the right list, she can do just about anything. She's a great toolbox. And then you look at your caster or your warlock, and you're like, "But I don't have any of those things." I get what people are saying, and I'd argue to the other side of it that I don't think it takes a ton of tweaking. But I would say, if we're going to see, we've seen nerfs to other casters. Bradigus is a perfect example. Why can't they just tune her that little bit to make her a little bit better?
Well, I would argue that the quote unquote nerf to Bradigus wasn't a nerf to Bradigus.
No, it was
pulling a faction in line with its original design intention. Right. Bradigus himself only got slightly less powerful. It took some of the ridiculous assassinations off of the board, but if you played against Bradigus post nerf, you're still gonna feel that in the morning.
I get you. I mean, Marc-Andre, how do you feel? Is there a way to quote unquote either nerf something in her just to bring her into balance, so that people, so that when you look at her, you're not completely overwhelmed, that wouldn't destroy her as a caster?
I think if you want to make the opposing game a little more enjoyable, you take away her ability to choose when things happen, as in your opponent's activations. It's also the only feat that affects models outside of the control area, in a sense, and because everything that's outside of it has to activate last. And that in and of itself is strong.
Yeah.
When you have a caster that has a feat they want to cast at the start of the turn, so someone like Raven or Baldur 2, for example. Sorry, well, Baldur 2 wants to cast it at the end, but sorry, Raven wants to cast it before all the models go. So even if you, because Haley's got a crazy assassination threat, if you keep that Raven out of Thorn's range, out of the guns, you keep her behind everything else, well, guess what? You're gonna have to wait around to feat with Raven.
Well, so I mean that sounds like a logic. George, argue the other side of it. Is that not a logical way to kind of just bring her in line? That, I mean, it doesn't change that much. It just makes it so that it's not so you don't just not enjoy the whole rest of the game.
There are 2 arguments here. One is the fluff argument, which I will make because I am a bit of a fluff bunny, and the fact that you have a chronomancer who literally is changing time around her. This is exactly what she should be doing. She should be pulling time forward and back so that each of the things on the battlefield are reacting in the way that she wants instead of in the way they want. Now that's the fluff.
We didn't know she could do that till Haley 3, though.
That's true.
Maybe
you're kind of jumping the gun here.
Well, we have always known that she's a chronomancer.
Yeah,
that has always kind of been her shtick. Is the time wizard. But you're right. Until we got all the Haley 3 fluff, we didn't know exactly how how do I put this? How Bill and Ted she really was.
Yeah. She comes with a phone booth now.
I'm pretty sure. I may have one of those modeled onto a unit or something. I don't know. But also, I think the part of her feat, part of that picking what goes when, is specifically one of the reasons that she is good. Speaking as a convergence player, who is perhaps the absolute worst person hit by this. So if you think about playing convergence, it is very, very activation dependent, because if I'm playing my faction right, I have focus streaming all over the board,
Right.
going from one jack to another. All they have to do is say your corollary activates last, and that means that I don't get any extra focus. They can just stop me from basically, they can say, well, you don't get to activate your jacks till the end, and you have to activate the one at this end who doesn't get to pass focus down the line, and then you activate this one over here that doesn't have any focus, right? But even with that, a canny player can do whatever they need to do on their turn. They just have to stop and think, not get tilted. Now, I will definitely admit that during a scenario battle where you have positioned badly, or you have suffered some losses in places that you really don't want to, it can take something from I have an outside chance to get back into these zones to a there's now no way I'm going to contest those zones. And I think that's what makes her so strong, but I don't think that makes her too strong.
Well, I also think, so to wrap it up, I play, to be an honest person, my main faction for the last year since I started playing the game has been Signar, and in tournaments I am a fast and furious Ekane / Haley 2 player. I mean, those are the two guys I drop every time, although that's all changed in the last couple of months. And I will admit that's the route I go because of the strength of that caster, because it's just a toolbox. And I think that we can argue these sides back and forth, and I think that's the problem, is that the people that are frustrated with Haley 2 are never going to stop arguing the other side, and those that don't care are still going to not care, and those that are willing to argue the other side. I think the reality is that we have to admit that she's a tiny bit unbalanced, but the reality is she's dealable.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, Mark.
I don't think what the change I'm proposing though is simply just about making her more or less strong.
Right.
I think if you remove the ability to choose how your turn goes, it may just make the game more fun.
Exactly. That I think is the crux.
I think that's the big thing.
That's the crux of the argument. The argument that people are trying. I think you're taking it when you read those forum posts as people whining. I'm taking it as people like myself who've, like, for prime example, you've seen how frustrated I got when Force Wall was slapped down in front of me. Mm-hmm. You've seen how frustrated people get the first time they deal with my Cephalix list when you're dealing with Thexus, and I go, yeah, now I'm going to move all your stuff.
Yep.
And you're like, what? You can't move all my stuff. It's that level of frustration that takes you out of the game, that makes you go, well, this sucks. I want to take my little toys and I want to go home. We just need to, we need to acknowledge that. We need to give it to those people.
Not since we're finishing up, I won't go any farther, but I think if we were talking a little bit longer, we'd have to examine the role that something like Tough plays in this argument, because it's a very similar thing. Now, I won't say it's removing agency, but it can be the exact same tilt. I just killed that guy 7 times.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
is he not dead?
All right, guys, we're going to leave that for now. If you have comments to weigh in on this argument, and I'm sure you guys do out there, feel free to throw them into the comments on the stream right now, or you can put them in either on our Facebook page tomorrow. We'll put it up on the Facebook page and let you guys go at it. And we'll be part of that debate, because this debate goes on. It's never going to stop. We're going to hear about it tomorrow. There'll be another post about it on the forums. But we're going to leave it at that. It's an open-ended argument. I don't think we came up. I think Mark, you came up with a really solid argument on how to tune it. We're not fixing the problem, we're tuning it. But let's move right along, guys. It is running on 8:20. So now we're going to talk a bit about rules. This section is called Damn Infernals. And we're going to talk a bit about how either we're going to debate a rule that's in question, that's maybe been ruled on recently by an Infernal, or we're going to talk about how a certain set of rules works. And I think this is great that we have Marc-Andre on board, because we can make sure that we're getting this right, because God knows there is a lot of misconceptions about the topic today. Guys, we're going to talk about formation.
Maybe the most forgotten rule in the entire book.
It's up there with remembering defeat. So, guys, here's the thing. I forget to. I mean, I do nothing but like try to remember rules. That's like my thing because I forget everything. I've got a brain like a really leaky faucet. Let's talk a bit about formation. George, start by introducing what is formation and how does it work in the game?
Well, formation from a sort of fluffy point of view is the group of troops running across the battlefield being able to hear their commander, being able to stay close enough to protect each other and to help each other out during a battle. The way this plays out in game is that every unit has a command, and all of the models in the unit have to stay within that command.
Ideally.
Ideally. So from a non-fluffy standpoint, you've got your unit on the field.
Mm-hmm.
What is the formation? You've got them on the field. You have to move them. What are the two things during activation of a unit? How do you keep them in formation? What are you supposed to do?
Well, you have to keep everybody within the command range of the commander. Now, who that commander is can change depending on whether you've got a UA attached. But everybody needs to stay within their command range of their commander. And if you get outside of that command range, basically bad stuff starts to happen.
Marc-Andre, what are the things that happens when a unit is out of formation?
Or models out of formation.
With with one major exception, you will not be able to make attacks or free strikes, which are, I guess, attacks as well. If you will have to take a command check if you enter the unit's movement or out of formation, the individual models that are out of formation will have to take a command check at -2. Of course, if they're fearless or undead, that doesn't happen, so go Cricks. Beyond that, you won't be able to use any other abilities they may have if they require that the model be in formation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, Semi, let's talk about when do you measure command range. One of the I believe I'm going to say 2 times you measure command range. Well, there's probably more, but tell me during the activation where are the 2 times that you're supposed to measure command range?
Well, obviously, you're going to want to check at the beginning of the activation to see if they can get orders like a charge order or a shield wall or something like that. And then, of course, you're going to want to check when you make your movement, because everybody should be ending their movement in the command range of the commander. You don't want to go running them off to the edge.
So even if they've started in command range and they moved out of it and then they're about to do whatever it was that they're going to do, if they're out of command range, they can no longer do it.
No longer do it.
Okay.
A classic example of this is if you have, say, someone who's attached a UA to a unit, and unthinkingly they charge the UA one direction, and the UA being the commander, and they've charged, say, somebody at the other end of the unit at somebody else. What they can unwittingly do is actually put a couple of models outside of that command area and cause those models to not be able to take their action.
Right.
In this case, the charge attack.
So, so Marc-Andre, you're pro as they come as far as I'm concerned. What are your tips for keeping your units in formation? Because I don't think there's anything more frustrating than being a relatively new player or even a senior player, and you're just about to do the most awesome thing of the century, and somebody goes, dude, you're totally, I want to check your command range. Check your command range. Oh, you're totally out of command range. What are your tips to stop that from happening?
One big thing is, of course, that you can measure your unit commander's command range during the unit's activation. So it's pretty typical to see players, while they move their leader, to measure command to all the models that have moved forward in the case of a charge, and make sure that everything is in range. What I like to do also is either paint my unit commander differently or like a big star on the back of his base so that I can identify it easily. This will help shave seconds off your clock, for one thing. It'll also just make sure you don't make that kind of mistake.
Excellent. I mean, those are both things I really should think
Yeah,
about
that
Well,
that sounds like a really good
the
idea.
nice thing about Cephalix is your unit commanders look completely different from everybody else.
That's true.
that
Unfortunately,
helps.
convergence not so much.
So let's turn this around, guys. We've got a couple minutes left on this topic. How do we use command range to our advantage without being stinky players? I mean, I think it's important. Like we'll remind you because we on the whole Moose Machine Network, we really, really, really want fair play. We never want you to use something to your advantage just to be a jerk, like
Yeah.
and never explaining to a new player, for example, formation, and then using it to beat them 6 or 7 times. We've always talked about it a million times on the show. First time was always a gimme, like, dude, don't forget about formation. Second time, kick them in the face, unless they're a really new player, and then give them a second chance. But with senior players and in tournament, which we can throw all that away, both of you, I mean, I'll start with Marc-Andre. Do you have any tips? How do you ever notice these things and use them to your advantage? And how? What's the trick?
Well, there's one big thing to remember is that when you kill a unit leader, you have to promote it, and that model can no longer make attacks for the turn. So just knowing that model that is going to be promoted can't make free strikes is just a good factor to use when you've got something being engaged that you want to get further down the field. This is especially useful when these models have reach. So like when you get Annihilator or a Bane Knight and you kill that leader, your opponent has to promote very carefully because it'll give you, good information, or it might give you a pocket where you can move a model without taking a free strike now. And that's pretty big. The flip side too is that if someone splits up their unit in a way that the leader is central and there are no models very close to it, you can kill that leader, and now they have to promote it to one side or the other, which will probably mean some models are out of formation on the following turn, or that turn as well. And your opponent is obligated to let you know which ones are not and which ones are in. That way you can again know what models can make attacks, which ones can't.
I think we just learned why Marc-Andre kicks our asses.
We even got a couple comments on that one.
Brad, Maelstrom.
Brad McLeod, also mind blown moment. Lord Cario wants to know, how can I find?
How can I find?
How can I find?
Okay, well, good to know. I don't know how you can find, but anyway,
Look harder.
Yeah, look harder.
Use thing for find.
There was also just
Google.
one quick exception with formation. There's a couple things where there's some abilities that don't require models to be in formation for them to happen.
Good to know.
Such as a ranger in Signar. That model does not have the model using his marked target does not have to be in formation. So it's pretty typical to run the unit of 6 guys, and when you just run one, 14 inches, the rest of the unit can retreat if you need be. And now everything within 5 of that out of formation ranger still gets a +2 to hit.
So you can sort of bullet them out one at a time.
Yeah,
And
that
I-
way you're not
I
let them
admit
do
to
their
doing
thing.
that a lot. And the second one, second exception.
When cavalry models make ride-by attacks, which basically means they move, make an attack, and then finish their move, they can be out of formation when they make their ride-by attack, which is
Interesting.
not a huge deal, but sometimes it can matter.
Well, it can give you a distinct advantage with the cavalry unit where you can basically give them a longer range, threat range, because they can get out of formation and make that one attack.
Now, before we leave this topic, we should mention the May errata of last year, the 2014 May errata.
Yes.
And that was very important because it stopped what used to be called the Kador arc node, where you would leave often it was a standard bearer, a single unit very far back from the front line, and you would use that to cast spells onto the entire unit. The wording now says that when there are models out of formation, I believe you cannot cast spells and you cannot upkeep spells on those units. And I believe that only applies to friendly, correct, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
So you can still cast. Well, I was going to say a Curse of Shadows, but you can still cast a offensive upkeep on those units, but they cannot maintain their buffs on the same unit.
All right, guys. So that's just a few tips and tricks for formation. I think
No
both
free strikes.
Yeah, both. I think all three of us are gonna. We just became much better players. If I could remember what
what
I was just taught seconds ago, then it would be really handy. But it's probably gonna go a bit like this. It's gonna go, haha, I could do a thing with what the frag was that thing that I knew there was something I could do here.
There's a formation thing I should be
Formation
remembering.
thing. Never mind. I feet. We're going to leave that behind, guys. If you have more tips and tricks on formation, please feel free to post them on the Facebook page or in the show notes or online right now. Maelstrom will get us that information out at the end of the show. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to hear your tips and tricks. We're going to move right along to our guest interview. We've already introduced you to Marc-Andre a little bit at the beginning of the show. To those just joining us on the stream, Marc-Andre LeBlanc is a member of Team Goose for the WTC. That's our Team Canada team for the War Machine and Hordes for 2015, going to Ireland. Marc-Andre, introduce yourself in better words than mine and tell us a bit about how you got into miniature wargaming.
Oh, wow. Okay. When I was 12, in elementary school, saw some kids playing a game called Mage Knight. It was a clicks-based game, collectible.
I remember it well.
I played that. I was hooked when I saw it. Played that. And when I was 14, the same company, WizKids, released a game called Mech Warrior Dark Age. It was like a clicks game, but now with big robots.